I was thinking, what would happen if you did TFM 10% in Bitcoin? And one of the first things I thought about was the bands would be way too narrow. You see your little green band up there because Bitcoin is so volatile. Now that's gonna begin to change a little bit over time as the prices get higher and higher and higher, and the market begins to mature a little bit. It becomes more efficient, and all these derivatives coming on. But anyway, you can see the bands are really tight. Now the only reason that I think it works with these tight bands is because the 50 simple weekly moving average is just so far away. And that's why it works, because that's part of the rules to the system. Again, that's the whipsaw filter. Oh, by the way, over here, MS Dev says, looking forward to the day you publish the list of a million little things. If you go to my YouTube channel and you go to Trader Quick Clips, every time I do a million little things, I throw it over there too. So that's probably where you can get the easiest way to get them all. But that's really, I know you want to party with me, but that's really been a lot of fun in that series. And I had something I think is really cool this week. You know, everything turns to trading. My wife's like, look at this dog. And I'm like, oh, okay, we could make that into trading. But anyway, when I looked at the first trade on this, I was pretty impressed. Bitcoin was at $371.56, and it ran up to 7,062. So that's like 362. That's like an 1,800% gain. So I'm like, well, wait a minute, this thing might work, almost 1,900%. And the other thing I noticed fairly quickly was the drawdowns are abysmal in Bitcoin. Okay, it's a volatile market, and I think it's going to dampen a little bit over time. But just remember, and I don't know who said it first, but it's very important to remember that and this is something I tell man on the street, you know, people in the gym, they start asking me about markets and all. I'm like, well, that's fine. But just remember that every asset class will lose at least 50% of its value at some point in its lifetime. And I've seen some pretty big spills, obviously, in my lifetime in Bitcoin. I've seen the stock market go down more than 50% a couple times. I think it went down 70, I always forget, 73%, the NASDAQ, that is. And then obviously back in the 20s, the P's lost about 90% of the value. But anyway, I did this little trade back test or whatever, so to speak. And it got me thinking that, okay, well, maybe there is some merits here. I've always thought that the zones, it wouldn't work because of the zones, but turns out it actually does work if you're using the moving average. Now, I didn't audit this. I just kind of threw this together last minute, and see, there's that 1,800% trade right there. Start with $10,000. And here are the trades. And so you've got only 5 trades in 8 years, and then this one's still open from April 24th of 23. That's kind of cool. So if you put 10,000 in and then you parlayed that, or what's the word, compounded that, good or bad, but in this case it was all good, you can see it did fairly well. Now this was a losing, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, you got 5 trades again. 2 were losers, but if you look at this one, you got in at 8,193, okay? And the high of the move was 14,000 round numbers, or 13.8 if you want to be more specific. So that's I should have done it earlier. I think that's a 40 or 50% move, but you still lost in the trade. So the point I learned from that, from looking at this system with Bitcoin, would be that you would definitely want to have a profit target or some kind of money management. If you're up 50%, then by all means, you probably want to take half of your shares off and then reset when you get back in on the next signal. And then right here, again, you can see, let's see, 54,007, and it hit 65,005. So that's 10,000. What's 10,000 divided by 50? Is that 20%? Should be, yeah, it's 20%. So you had a 20% move. That's nothing to sneeze at, especially once it's getting these higher numbers. So again, maybe some money management would work. Now, one thing that kind of shocked me was buy and hold actually wins by $1 million, okay? $1 million and change. And initially I was shocked, and I said, well, hold on, Dave. You got in, or the system got in at 371.56, the same time the other system triggered a buy, so put them both at the same time. see which one wins. And buy and hold beat the pants off of it. Now, here's the thing: the designer's intent of this system was to avoid the so-called diaper change moment, and that comes from Ian McAfee. That's when the market, like I guess yesterday was a diaper change moment for a lot of people in the market. For me, it was just a stomach ache and a lot of f-bombs. But anyway, the original thought was to try to avoid these diaper change moments, and this is how far the market dropped after you got out. So there's 50, let's say 1, 2, you got 3 greater than 50% drops, and this one was 67%. Now, here's the question, and what would the world be without hypothetical questions, said Mr. Wright. Could you really hold through a 70% drawdown? I don't know. I think even ludicrous would say that's ludicrous. I can't imagine anybody would do that. And this last trade, by the way, is still open, okay? So it's up 232%. Now, again, the reason it worked was because the market, if you squint your eyes or you look at it from across the room, the market went straight up. Yeah, it lost 70% and 50% or more 3 times, right? But overall, it did go straight up. So buy and hold will beat a system if the market starts here and ends way up here, obviously, okay? Longer term, though, it will not. And the other thing to realize is there's a value in sitting in cash and being out of the market, especially during a 70% drawdown, right? And so you can see that out of the 9 years that I calculated on this, you were out of the market about 3 of those years, or 35% of the time. So I forget what it is in a TFM 10% system, but it's probably very similar, where you're out of the market at least 30 to 40% of the time. And it's nice being able to sleep at night and not be in the market. So that's kind of the original designer's intent. This might need to be tweaked a little bit. Maybe those zones could open up a little bit, but the moving average is going to be so far behind, I don't think it's going to matter. And that's one thing that I can never wrap my head around. It's like, okay, well, how do we adjust for other markets, maybe with historical volatility or some other volatility measurement? Because the S&P 10% is such a good round number, but that moving average might be the key to that. Now, the zones, again, are probably less relevant at 10% because Bitcoin obviously can move 10% overnight or in one afternoon, or used to at least. So anyway, I'm throwing that out. No opinion. I'm not saying run out and do it. I'm not saying I'm doing it, but I do find it kind of interesting, and it does kind of help you wrap your head around why you do trade a system. You trade a system so you could hopefully avoid, especially a system like this, which is made to avoid diaper changes, you could avoid those huge diaper change moments.